All right, cool.
Okay.
And now, all right. You guys see this?
Yep.
Cool, cool. All right. So let's jump in. Oh, fucking hell. That's not what I meant to do. Here we go. Okay. So let's go over this. So strength versus hypertrophy. So these things are different. I think this is really important for everybody to kind of understand. You're no more than all of the coaches you've ever had in your life by the time you get through this. So let's just define both and go over both and what they're both trying to do and how you target both. Okay. So in one slide, we're pretty much going over all of this. So they're not the same goal. They are very distinct. I tend to use them interchangeably because I know what I'm trying to say. And I use it in a way that people will get without an explanation. So when I say strength work, people know what that means, even though to me it actually means something a little bit specific. But so there is strength and then there's hypertrophy. These are two different things. Strength, believe it or not, is not change. It's not training the muscle. It's training the nervous system. It's training how good you are at controlling the muscle. It's not necessarily training the muscle. Hypertrophy is training the muscle. So this is actually increasing the muscle tissue, or it's essentially trying to increase the muscle tissue, where strength work is essentially trying to increase your body's choreography of the muscle, if that makes sense. Okay. The adaptation for strength is neural. It's your brain being able to turn on certain muscle groups and to do so forcefully. Where the adaptation for hypertrophy is the actual increase of muscle tissue. Okay. Now, the load that you need is tremendously different. So, when you're doing strength and you're trying to force neurological adaptation, you're trying to force your brain to get good at contracting muscle, the load needs to be over 85% of their one rep max. Otherwise, you're not really going to even recruit the muscle that you need. Okay. You're never going to reach that point where you have to. Hypertrophy, on the other hand, can be honestly actually loads as low as 30% of a one rep max can work. So anything from 30% to 85% is mainly the hypertrophy range, let's say. Now you can hypertrophy at your one rep max too, but you just can't do it that much because it's your one rep max, right? So you don't have enough volume to do it, but technically you could. But so the loading range is a lot different. Now, reps just go along with the load. So you're not doing any more than 85% of your one rep max for any more than 5 reps. It's impossible. So the reps that you're doing that you train at, so to speak, is nothing more than how many reps you could do with the loading that's required. Does that make sense? So there's nothing magical about the reps that cause strength. So let me put this another way. Does doing 3 reps at 60% of my one rep max caused me to get stronger? Anybody want to answer that?
Wait, ask that again.
Yeah, oh man, thank you. There he is.
Wait, wait,
I was
wait,
ready.
wait, wait.
I was
Answer.
ready.
What was that?
Does
What was that
anybody
question?
think that doing 3 reps at 60% of your max makes you stronger? So let's say you
No.
have a 100
Oh,
pound back squat and you do 3 reps at 60
no.
pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. 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 No.
No, right? And the main reason for that is because you can do a lot more, right? Your body's not really stressed. Or put another way, neurologically, your brain doesn't have to recruit forcefully and it doesn't have to recruit the max amount of fibers to move 60%. It doesn't have to, right? It's not enough load that it has to worry about that. But what you could do with those 60 pounds is you could take it to failure, right? You could do a bunch of reps, which could make you, 15, 20 reps before you hit failure. And then right before you get to failure, it will recruit more muscle groups because it has to. But it's not neurologically doing it from the beginning because the load's not heavy enough. Does that make sense? Does everybody kind of get the difference?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So the end of you doing, let's say, a 1 rep max or a 3 rep max, the heaviest weight that you can do for 3 reps, your body is going to recruit the muscle forcefully, which is only happens on the hypertrophy realm that last rep when you're going to failure. And so, because at that point, your body is exhausted all the muscle that it would normally use. And then it gets to the point where it's holy shit, like now we're about to get to fail. It almost mimics what that 3 rep max felt like or a 1 rep max felt like and that moment on the last rep before failure. That is when your body will start to engage neurologically more muscle, but not before. And so basically the point of all this is that the loading and the reps that you're doing are massively different. Okay. The rest is actually the same. So the amount of rest that you need between each set is actually the same because neurologically you need it. And for hypertrophy, you need it. In order for that muscle to contract again forcefully after going to failure, you're going to need a lot. So that kind of makes sense a little bit first, just strength and hypertrophy. We're going to dive into this more. But now, without getting too crazy about this, what actually causes, so if we're looking at hypertrophy, for instance, what actually causes hypertrophy? Strength is neurological. Strength is, again, the choreography of your muscle, not the increase of muscle. So, what causes, if we're looking at hypertrophy, we're looking at increasing muscle, what actually causes the increase of muscle? What causes hypertrophy? Mechanical tension is the primary driver. This is the guy. Okay, so what the fuck does that mean? It's force times time, okay, on the muscle. So muscle has to be engaging or contracting to apply force, and it has to do it for a long enough time for your body to get the stimulus to grow. Okay. Now, what that doesn't mean is the pump. Okay. So when you feel the cell swelling, let's say you're doing bicep curls or something, and you feel your bicep blow up, that is what we naturally think of as increasing muscle, but it's actually not. All that is the cell retaining fluid. It doesn't actually have anything to do with how much force or time the muscle is being placed under. Neither does soreness. Okay, DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, is something that we think about in terms of, oh man, if I did a really killer workout, I'm going to be sore the next day. But soreness is not growth. All that is repairing tissue. It doesn't mean it's adding. Okay, so we're not at the addition part. We're just, holy shit, we're fucked up. Let's get back to normal. That's all DOMS is. So no matter how sore you are, it doesn't mean shit. It means that you tore it to pieces and now you have to recover it. And that's what you're feeling. Okay, so that also does not relate to how much muscle you're going to build, and neither does the burn. So if you guys are doing, really light weights, this is where the group class type stuff will come into. You think CrossFit or Orange Theory or something like that, and you're doing lightweight to failure, and you feel the muscle burn. That also actually does not cause hypertrophy. If anything, it goes against it. It's actually counterproductive for a lot of reasons. What causes hypertrophy is mechanical tension. Okay, force and the amount of force the muscle has to put out and how long it has to do it. Okay. Now, what the fuck does that mean in practice, right? So how do you what is force? Force means basically the percent of your 1 rep max that you're using, so over 60%. Okay. And then the time. So how long you're doing that set for. What most people don't realize is how close you have to get to failure and how many times you have to do that per week to actually grow. So most people have to do, well, based on the research, if you're not doing at least 10 sets per muscle group per week, you're probably not going to grow. But the minimum effective dose is 4. So technically, you could do 4 sets per muscle group per week and actually grow if you're really going to failure fully and you're more of a novice, like you haven't lifted that much and your muscle is still somewhat new. Okay. We have seen research studies that go 20 to 30 sets per muscle group per week. Every single time they do these sets, and they do this within subject studies, which means they'll do the same exact person does a 12-week cycle with 10 sets versus the same person doing a cycle of 20 sets. In other words, they're taking interperson variability out of the equation because they have the exact same person do different sets and they measure that person's response to muscle. Okay. What you found, or we found, is that at least 10 sets is required, but more sets is always, always better. By the way, I had people in the waiting room. I never added them in. So I'm just shit talking people and then give them a chance to come in. Hey guys.
Going to tell them to try and go back in.
Yeah, that's got a number good. Okay. So more sets is always better. In the research, what they've seen, they had one person that did 8 sets per muscle group per week. They had one person who did 20 sets per muscle group per week. They had that same person do 30 sets per muscle group per week. Every time they did more, it was better without fail. Literally, what I'm saying is the more strength you do, the better, period, which is fucking nuts. Usually there's some sort of like bar here where it's like, all right, this was too much. They've purposely done research studies where they tried to break people. They literally had they had people, there was one where they had people squat. I think they did like 10 to 15 sets. These were power lifters, so really strong people. So their 1 rep maxes were high. And they were doing sets of till failure with like 60, 70, 80% every day. They were squatting like that to failure. And it's insane. And still they were growing. They actually were trying to get them to break. And they felt like they were breaking psychologically. They felt really weak. They felt terrible, but their strengths kept going up. That's fucking insane. But anyway, so point is, you need more sets than you think. And this is per muscle group. So again, if you're thinking like your quad, if you do 5 sets of squats today, that's 5. So 10 to 20 per week. Okay. So in other words, 3 sets of chest on chest day is not a training stimulus. Okay. That's not even going to touch this. Doesn't even come close. Okay. So when you're doing bro splits or like chest and tries, back and buys, and that kind of thing, you still have to apply this. This is why bro splits aren't really that great for most people, because you're not getting enough volume. You're not doing, 10 sets, or definitely not doing 20 sets of chest on chest day, right? Especially not at high percentages going to failure. Okay. And here's the failure part. So, like I just mentioned, going to failure is really important. Again, this is still for hypertrophy. Okay. Hypertrophy is specifically what I'm talking about. In order to hypertrophy the muscle, or to grow the muscle, you have to be getting within 0 to 3. Well, within 0 to 3 reps in reserve, basically close to failure. So you have to be within 3 reps of failing. Okay. You don't have to actually fail. Okay. But you have to get pretty close. The lower of a weight you're using, the closer you have to get to failure. Okay. The reason for that is because if we go back to strength versus hypertrophy, again, strength is training the nervous system. This is not training the muscle. This is training the brain at getting good at recruiting the muscle. Hypertrophy is training the muscle to get bigger. If we understand that it makes sense that in order to get strong, you have to use really high percents of a 1 rep max. Okay. So if my deadlift is 600 pounds, I need to be using at least like 550 pounds to even have a reason for my brain to maximally engage the muscle tissue. Otherwise, it won't. The load has to be heavy enough to engage the nervous system to get better at firing the muscle. But hypertrophy is not about the brain, it's about the actual muscle growing. Okay. In order for that to happen, you have to take these lower loads to failure, because mechanical tension, or the amount of force that you're putting on the muscle multiplied by the amount of time, is what actually increases that muscle. So if I'm using 60% and it's a lower end, that means that the force is lower. In order to get the hypertrophy I need, the time has to be higher, right? So I need to be using that lower force to failure. That means more reps. If I'm using a higher force, so if I'm using something like 80% of my 1 rep max, then the time or the reps that I'm using is going to be a lot less. Okay. But the key, the marker, the thing that says, well, how much weight do I, or how many reps do I use at this weight, is proximity to failure. Okay. That's the equalizer. If you're not sure how many reps to do at 65% to hypertrophy versus 85%, you don't have to. The reason for that is because you just go to fucking failure, you're going to figure it out. Okay. So how close you are to failure is the key for hypertrophy. Now, you don't have to actually go to failure, but if we look at the research on this, it's just as bad as the research on calorie tracking. And you guys know how much we hit that, right? Most people track X and they're eating Y. And that difference is massive. It's usually like 60 to 70%. It's the same when it comes to strength work. When people go to failure, they'll actually put electrodes on people's muscle and they'll tell them to go to failure. They can literally see when the muscle fails or not. They will tell them to go to failure. They're usually on average 10 reps from actual failure. So when somebody stops, they think that they're about to fail. They still have 10 reps they could have done before they actually fail. So even though hypertrophy, you don't have to actually fail to get the stimulus to grow. You have to be within 0 to 3 reps of actual failure to grow, which means most people, when they go to failure, are not even coming fucking close to growing the muscle. Does that make sense? They're usually 10 reps off, and they have to be within 3 to actually grow. The more advanced you are, the more that matters. I wouldn't be able to grow my muscle unless I'm like literally failing. Like I have to get really close to failure. If I'm like 5 or 6 reps out, I'm not doing anything. I'm basically massaging the muscle, right? It's like, hey, just make sure you're working. You know, you're good. Hey, it has nothing to do with actually growing. Does that make sense? So from a practical standpoint, go to actual failure. Because if you, yes, you don't need to go to failure, but you're probably not going to be anywhere fucking close to failure when you think that you actually are. Okay. This is very similar to calories. It's like if I told somebody who just started tracking their calories to eat 1,200 calories and they told us that they're not losing weight at 1,200, we would all tell them at the same time, you're full of shit. Right. So it's the same thing when it comes to strength. Now, here's something that's fucking wild. Okay. If you did nothing else, this is probably the most backwards thing you'll ever hear about strength work. That's really, really fucking important. If you did nothing else and you just rested double the time in between your sets, you would probably grow muscle 100% more. This is fucking nuts. They've done this in the research a lot. So 5-minute rest intervals grew the muscle 152%, where 1-minute rest intervals grew it by 76%. So let me put this another way. If you rest 5 minutes, let's just pick something really simple, leg extensions, okay? I'm doing leg extensions. My goal is hypertrophy. So I'm doing whatever weight I'm doing, and I'm going to failure, absolute failure, like actual failure, right? 2 versions of this. I do my first set to failure on both of them. On one of them, I rest 1 minute. I'm still in the seat, right? Everybody knows this job. I'm guilty of it too. I do it too. But like, let's say I do a leg extension set, right? And I'm just sitting here because I don't like want to move. And I'm like, yeah, fuck it. I'm just kind of looking around. And I go back after a minute. I do the next set, right? We all do it. I get it. But so there's that versus the other one where I do a set. I fucking get up. I walk. I go to the bathroom. I come back, right? 5 minutes later, and then I do another set. Just from that alone, you would have doubled the progress. You would have increased muscle protein synthesis by an additional 70, 80%. That is insane. Okay. The main reason for this is because if you don't rest long enough, then the amount of force that you can put out is dramatically lower, which means the less tension you can put out. Again, mechanical tension is everything. Okay. Force times time is what grows the muscle. If you're not resting long enough, you're not going to be able to take the same amount of force that you just had for the same amount of time. Okay. If I did, I don't know, 200-pound leg extensions for a set of 20, so my force was 20, and I did it. Wait, what? No, I said that backwards. Did I say 200 pounds for 20? That's really confusing number. All right. So let's say I did 200 pounds for 10 reps, a little bit easier. Distinguish the difference. 200 pounds for 10 reps. That was me going to failure, right? And then I come back a minute later and I keep 200 pounds, but I only did 2 reps, right? Because I wasn't recovered enough to get the same equation, right? You're never going to get the same exact thing, especially if you went to failure. But if I did 200 pounds and I got 8 reps, that is dramatically better than doing 200 pounds for 2 reps because I only rested a minute, right? So the difference that has on muscle growth is substantial. Okay, so And they've done a bunch of research on this that it usually accumulates to about 15% more total volume. So basically the amount of reps that you're doing or the amount of time that you're moving that weight for is going to be around 15% more, which is why it's leading to such a bigger increase in muscle protein synthesis. Okay. So even though short rests seem cool, right? It gets your heart rate up, it makes the muscle burn, it means jack dick. Does that make sense? Okay. Is all you're doing is wasting your fucking time because you're literally, if you are increasing the same force, sometimes people also go down in weight, which is a whole other thing, right? Because now you're really destroying this equation. But if you are keeping the same force, the amount of time that you're doing it for dramatically just got lowered. Okay. Which means the amount of tension that you're doing is dramatically lower. Does this make sense? So, this
Yeah.
is why one of the big problems with group class structures is this. Because in a perfect world, the power lifter is the opposite of this. So, if you guys have ever seen powerlifters train or how I train in strongman, I'm not exaggerating, we literally have seats. People bring chairs and they put it next to their platform. And people always make fun of everybody because we're sitting the fuck down. But this is why we're sitting the fuck down. We literally sit down. Like we'll do a really heavy set of something that just like, took everything I had possibly to lift that fucking weight. And then I need to sit down and like read a book or something because I'm fucked up. I'm going to need a minute, right? In order to go back up to that bar and approach that fucking demon again, right? Because it's that much force that I need to put out to move that motherfucking thing, right? And you need to sit down in order to do that.
Yeah, but I have a question. So, like you're saying, like the 5 minute rest or the three, whatever. I was gonna say, I guess that's why like the classes, like you're moving so fast, like you really don't see the change. But so if you're going to failure, say leg extensions or whatever, and you go to failure, you said 20. If you rest that, 3 to 5 minutes, whatever it is, and go back, you can fail again to 20, right? Because I know like you're supposed to fail again almost to that number or more, or it should be
That's a
less.
really good question. Yeah, so that's a really good question. How close should you be getting to your previous sets is basically kind of like if you're really resting enough, how close can you get to that first set? That's a really fucking good question, honestly. So it's a careful answer. So you shouldn't be able to do what you did,
Okay.
but you should be able to get close.
Okay.
There is a work capacity difference person to person. Some people don't have good work capacity, meaning that like they're not able to, even with 5 minutes of recovery, they can't really get that close. That's a different problem that's worked. But I mean, the solution to that is just to keep training because you will increase your work capacity. But you should be able to get close, but you should never be able to beat it, and you should never
Okay.
really be able to hit it unless you like rested a really long time. Like if you rested like
Okay.
20 or 30 minutes, like maybe you can get close
Okay.
to it. But that would be more a sign that the first set wasn't a failure. And that we see a lot. So sometimes people will do their first set and let's say they go to failure and they get 15. And then I'll see them like do another set of 15. And I'm like, you definitely, but basically what that tells me is they fucked both of them up. The first one didn't go to
Okay.
failure because there's no way they would be able to do that again. And the second one, I doubt that if they truly were going to failure, they just so happened to hit the exact same rep that they got the first time. Probably also fucked that up. Probably what they did was they hit the rep number and they stopped. And they probably stopped themselves because they either had that rep number in their head as the goal. And so they hit it and then like they stopped. Or they knew I would look at the log and be like, how the fuck did you do more in the second set? And they stopped. So it didn't look like they did more. So usually that's a sign that both are fucked up.
Okay.
Does that make sense? But that's a
You
really
know,
good
that's why I was
question.
wondering.
So
Because I said, like sometimes I'll go, and then I feel like the second set I'm almost at the same amount, and I'm like, did I really go to failure that
yeah,
last time?
that's okay. What
Okay.
you will notice is the higher the percent, the bigger the drop off. So like the heavier that you go and the higher, like on those heavy days, like the 8 rep days and stuff, you'll probably have a bigger drop off than you would
Okay.
on the 20 rep days. If rest is enough, if
Okay.
that makes sense. But yeah, that's a really good question. So one thing that I say this a lot when I'm talking about hypertrophy and strength and reverse dieting and all this kind of stuff. Like, one of the things that you want to switch into mentally is strength. Like, you want to have the goal of numbers. You want to look at this and be like, all right, what number am I hitting? Right. This is flipping back to what I was saying about strength before, which I'll get back to how they intersect in a second. But when you're thinking about the number on the bar, then what you're going to do is you're going to push more and more and more and more, which is really important, because sometimes people just put like weights on there and they go to failure and they kind of keep the same weight and they're not really so focused on pushing the weight up. But if you're focused on every single week increasing that weight and going to failure, this stuff will happen on its own, because you won't be able to get to that number again. Like, even if
So
you're
just like the 50, like where I'm stuck, like, I could probably do 4 on my own, but like I got the 8 because probably Jay was behind me and I wasn't going to lose my head. And then this time I was by myself and I got 5, and then I dropped down the weight. Does that still do the same? Like I still rested in between, but then when
yeah,
I
that's
did,
a good question.
45 pounds, I blew like 15 out before I even.
Yeah, so there's two things to say there. Number one, if you guys are taking whatever lift that you're doing and you're going to failure and you get less than 5 reps, it's probably worth lowering the weight for the next
Okay.
set,
Okay.
so that you can get more reps to go to failure. And again, the reason for that is this. So
Okay.
basically, like, if you're using the same force, but the time dramatically changes, or the reps that you're doing, which is the time that you're moving the force, or the
Right.
time that your muscle is contracting for, is dramatically less, then one thing that you could do is lower the force a little bit so the time is higher. So it's kind of like, if I did 300 pounds for 5, technically this would be like 300 pounds for 30 seconds, whoever the 5 reps took me. So let's say I did 300 pounds and for 30 seconds, 5 reps 30 seconds, right? And I did it again, and I would only be able to do 300 pounds for like 5 seconds, 1 rep, right? That is a substantially lower work output. That's a lot less mechanical tension. So one of the things that we could do is lower that by like 10% is usually a good marker. So if I lower by 10% and I go to 270 pounds and now I
Okay.
get 4 reps, that total mechanical tension is a lot closer to what I did the first set. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So that's why, okay, when Lindsay was because I was like, and I still felt it, like and I was just okay.
No,
I'm
that's
done.
the perfect move. Yeah, no, that's perfect. And that's exactly why, for some of you guys, I think I might have put it in some of your guys' logs, but that's exactly why I'll prescribe what's called the reverse pyramid, which is essentially that, like, it's just that you go down in weight as the reps go on, or as the sets go on, but you don't do the opposite. That's where a lot of people fuck up. A lot of people do like pyramids, where they'll do like one weight at a lower weight for higher reps, and then they'll get heavier. But that's opposite, because now you're doing that for, it doesn't make any sense. Like, you want to be able to apply the most force when you're fresh. So you'll go the heaviest that you can first, and then as that fatigues, you only lower the force because the total mechanical tension is less than you want it to be. Um, but yeah, it's a really good question. So then another part of this, so we understand that it's okay, force and time, hypertrophy, rest makes a big difference. Cool, got it. What else? So one of the other things that's really important is how the force is being applied to the muscle. Okay, this is why if you hear like range of motion and full depth squats and all this kind of stuff, why does it fucking matter? It's because of how the force is actually being applied to the muscle. We understand that force and how long the force is being applied for is what drives hypertrophy. But how the force is actually even being applied to begin with makes a massive difference. Okay, so we want force, but we want it on the muscle, right? And the muscle, the most force gets placed in the muscle when it's in a stretched position. Okay, you think about a rubber band and you pull it, it's going to be a lot more forceful than just kind of chilling here, right? It's the same thing with muscle. And so in order to stretch the muscle, you have to be doing the right movements to begin with. And that's why if you look at things like deep squats, okay, instead of a quarter squat, or incline dumbbell curl, easy example. I'll literally show you this. So like, got to move my chair. Rob knows the deal here. Here we go. Okay, so got to put the brakes on this thing. There we go. So let's say if I'm doing a regular curl, right? From here, I'm gonna use the non-tattoo arm. So from here to here, okay? This is where the bicep is stretching, okay? The down position, okay? This is the bicep stretching. This is regular range of motion. If I wanted to force the muscle to stretch more and apply more force, then I could do something like an incline dumbbell curl. Trying to figure this out here. Now, if I do this, do you see how it's stretching the bicep more? Right. So this is kind of a weird situation, but what should be happening if you use like this is why they have like the curl bars and stuff for biceps, right? So if I'm doing this, it's going to actually apply more force on the bicep when I come down, right? This part is stretching and applying the force. You actually grow the muscle the most on the eccentric part, the stretching part. So when you do a squat, when you go down, that's actually what's loading the quad, right? If you look at your knee, yeah, let's say I'm in the bottom of a squat, right? Full range of motion is when it's kind of hard to figure out here, but when your quad is being fully stretched. If I'm here, this part isn't really stretched, right? This is the quad. If I bend and I'm at a full squat, like ass to grass all the way down, my quad is fully stretching at the knee. This full stretch is where the force is being applied. That force is the whole fucking point of what we're doing, right? If you're not in a position where you're maximally putting that force onto the muscle, then it's not actually going to grow. So the exercises that we're doing in the first place massively matter. Okay. So like Romanian deadlifts, even little things like overhead triceps extensions are way better than something like a push down. If you're doing a regular push down, you're kind of going from here to here, right? If you go an overhead tricep extension where you grab the thing from behind you and you're like this and you have the cable pulling you down, it's literally going to maximally stretch the tricep in the bottom position, right? So how you're stretching the muscle also manipulates how much force you can put on the muscle, which is why the full range of motion should always, always, always be non-negotiable. Okay. This is why if I have people squat and they're not squatting all the way down, you're not doing anything. Like you're not putting the force onto the muscle. You're not going to grow the muscle. The whole reason that we're even doing this shit doesn't matter if you're not forcefully putting the force on the muscle, right? So again, this is why you have to be really careful with a lot of the exercises that you're doing, and why if you're working on your own, you can manipulate this stuff. But a lot of times, if you go to classes or coaches or whatever, and they're not experienced with this stuff, they could literally be telling you to do movements that won't do shit when it comes to muscle because you're not actually stretching it, right? So when you can manipulate this, there's some like Lynn's in frequency. So frequency is another group class gym. It's a really good gym. But like one of the things they'll do, for instance, is they'll have people squat on an elevated heel, right? They have like these planks that you're like standing on, and it's like you're fucking going down. I don't know how to fucking describe this. Like your foot, like
heel.
your heel's up. Okay. And the reason why they'll do that is because if your heel is up, it allows you to get your ass lower down and it stretches at the knee, just like I showed you. So there's things that you can do if you have to, but trying to get full range of motion is going to be the key because that's how you can actually put stress on the muscle. So here's some interesting stuff. So let me just wrap this up really quick. Okay. So there's strength and then there's hypertrophy. Okay. Strength is your brain getting better at recruiting muscle. That only happens at really fucking heavy loads. Okay. It's the choreography of muscle. It's your brain getting better at recruiting the muscle at the right time. Hypertrophy trains the actual muscle. Okay. This is all about mechanical tension, which is how much force or the weight that you're using and how long you're doing it or how many reps you're doing it for. Okay. Let me go back to this. So if you're doing lower percentages or less force, then you have to do it for more time. Okay. So you have to, obviously, if it's lighter, you go to failure, it's going to be more reps. Okay. Things like, oh, I have to say this again. The pump, soreness, the burn, all that stuff means nothing. Okay. That does not do anything for muscle. Really take that in, because this is the things that we feel. And so we think that those things are going to mean something. They don't. What means something is getting 10 to 20 sets per muscle group, doing it really close to failure, actual failure. Remember, most people, when they go to failure in research, are still 10 reps out from actual failure. So really going to failure, okay, 10 to 20 sets per week, going to failure with long rests in between so that you can actually maximally recruit the right muscles, okay? And then you want to make sure that you're actually doing the right exercises. Now, here's things that this is this is crazy. So here's things that can negatively impact your ability to increase muscle. So let's say you're doing all of that stuff and you're doing the right exercises, you're doing them the right way, you're doing the right loads, you're going to intensity, you're going to failure. Sleep, one bad night can lower muscle protein synthesis by 20%. If you slept like an asshole tonight and you did strength tonight, you're going to get 20% less gains than you could have. Isn't that nuts? That's fucking crazy. Like 20%, your whole workout is 20% less effective if you sleep like an asshole tonight. This is why I literally picked, like, there's been days where, like, I literally picked what I was going to work out or what I was going to do if I knew my sleep was going to suck. Like, if I had to travel tomorrow, I would probably, I'd probably do something, but I wouldn't really be trying that hard. I would basically be like walking in circles. I would do like strength work, but not really go to failure or whatever, because the amount that you would get out of it is in. So if you have a rest day, like, you want to use those rest days on days where you know you're not going to sleep well, because the gains that you're going to get from it are going to be pretty fucked up. Protein, another big one. Okay. If you're not getting enough protein, this can also hugely negatively affect your muscle protein synthesis. This is even more dramatic than sleep. I would say, I wish I had it on here from the research sites. I want to say it's probably like at least 20 to 40%. It can make a big difference. Or put another way, if you don't get enough protein in today and you did the strength work, you're taking about a third of the gains away. Now, if you sleep like an asshole and you don't get the protein in, you just took like half of your shit away. That's crazy. So this is where that God damn it. Here we go. This is where the protein before sleep comes in, because this is where a lot of that research came in from that I pulled it from. There you go, Dina. I see you eat protein. It's perfect. And then making sure you don't go too long without getting protein. So the biggest thing, and for that same reason, actually, is protein and sleep. Like, obviously, if we're not sleeping like assholes and we're saving that 20%, then you're probably going to be sleeping a decent amount of time, right? And if you're sleeping a decent amount of time, that also means you're not getting protein in, obviously, because you're not eating when you're sleeping, okay? So the whole point of this is to get a good bump of protein in, ideally 40, before you go to sleep, so that you can increase that muscle protein synthesis overnight. Because if you worked out and then you go 8 hours without getting protein in, your body can't recover the muscle the way that it wants to. Okay. And then lastly, deloads. So this is a whole other thing I'm not going to get too crazy into right now. Traditional deloads you don't necessarily need, but you do want to deload your body from and resensitize it to the intensity, meaning that going to failure. So every, 4 to 6 weeks is a little extreme. I would say every block. So every like really hard block that you do, like maybe 12 weeks or so, you'd want to actually take a week off and just chill and let your body recover. The way that I typically do this for people is more so in changing the plan. Because if you change the plan in like 10 weeks or 12 weeks or something, it takes you a couple of weeks to get your nervous system engaged with those new movements that you're not really going to be that intense. So it kind of does it itself. Now, two last things. Strength, again, we talked about strength and hypertrophy being different, okay? Here's what's fucked up, okay? This is why what I was saying before, when people go through a heavy reverse diet or they really want to make get the gains in the reverse diet, they want to start really looking at strength. This is like Lauren. This is what I was saying to you and Lindsay, Adina, you too, since you're gonna be doing that. Basically all of you guys, but strength becomes more and more a priority. Why? Because mechanical tension is force. If you think about doing a 1 rep max, okay, what that actually is your brain being, or your brain's maximal ability to recruit muscle. Okay. You could have two people. You could have this big jack dude, me, and then some other scrawny guy, right? The scrawny guy could hypothetically lift more than the jack dude. Probably not, but he could. And if he did, the only reason that he could is because his brain is better at communicating to his muscle than the jacked guy. If the brain was the same to both of them, there is no way in fucking hell that the guy with more muscle would not be able to outlift the other guy. Does everybody understand that? So the whole like CrossFit world kind of threw everybody off with this because you saw people who were smaller be able to lift a lot of weight. And that was because they were good at choreography. They were really good at getting their brain to recruit muscle on certain movements. But if that dude could do the same thing, he would outlift him every single time, because all your brain is doing is telling your muscle to engage. If you have more muscle to engage, your brain can do the same shit with more muscle, and you will always, always provide more force. Okay. But the point of this is that mechanical tension is force. The way that we can measure that is the weight that you're putting on the bar. So even though when you're doing hypertrophy, you have to go to failure, and you have to make sure that your percentages can be different. You obviously don't want to be doing 90% of your 1 rep max, so you can only do 1 rep. And so the time, remember, it's force and time. The time is going to be too low. But you do want to go heavy, and you want to make damn sure that every single week you're pushing the weight, that you're pushing the force. You want to be putting more mechanical tension on the muscle every single week. And in order to do that, you have to be really focused on making sure that you're getting stronger, that you're actually pushing your weight, because your brain has to get better at using the muscle for your body to stress the muscle. Right? If your brain can't get good at using the muscle and recruiting the muscle, then it's not going to be able to put the stress on the fucking muscle. Right? So they go hand in hand if they're used properly. Now, a couple things is that novices can grow on anything. Okay, you guys won't. If you've been doing strength at all for a year or two, if you haven't yet, then you'll be able to grow without having to be so crazy about this stuff, right? Like if you just go within 10 reps of failure, you'll grow, but that will stop fast. And then the only way that your muscle is going to grow is if you go really, really close to failure. Otherwise, you're not going to grow. Okay, so even adding reps at the same weight, which can work to a point, is only going to have so much mechanical tension. It's only going to be so much. Think about this, right? It's like if you're doing 20-pound, lat raises, right? And you get to 20 reps. If you look at the force times the time, 20 pounds by 20 reps. Why do I keep doing that? I don't know. But whatever, 20 and 20. Okay. So if I wanted to go next week and I couldn't increase the weight and I kept it at 20 pounds and I was really close to failing, right? And I barely got 21 reps. That doesn't really change the mechanical tension that much, right? You basically put the muscle under another second. It's not really that big of a change from what you did last week. What's a lot bigger of a change is going to 25 pounds and then having to get somewhere close to those 20 reps. If I got 25 pounds by like 15 reps, that amount of total force and mechanical tension is going to be a lot different from the 20 by 20. Does that make sense? And a lot different than doing 20 pounds for 21 reps versus 20 reps. The difference there is going to be a lot bigger by going up in weight. Does that make sense? So even though we can progress in reps, it's only to a point until we have to start really looking at the weight on the bar, which is why a lot of times for a lot of you guys, if you're going through the reverse diets, like the thing is going to be the weight. Like you're going to have to really focus on the weight going up and up and up and up, like to the point where it's like if you're going in at squat day, It's not like a casual stroll into the gym. It's like a holy fuck, it's squat day. Fuck. All right. You know, you're down like the espresso shots, you put the angry music on, you go in and fucking do some shit, right? Like that's because your nervous system literally has to get fucking amped in order to recruit that muscle, right? So it's gonna turn everybody into a psycho. What the fuck? There we go. Okay, mouse is back. All right. So this is the feedback loop. Okay, so bigger muscle has more potential for force. The more force that you can put on the muscle, the more you grow. The more you grow, the more muscle you have to recruit, the more tension you can put on, right? It's a cycle. They go hand in hand. But this is really, really important because one without the other will not increase, okay? So if you're just applying the same force and the muscle doesn't grow and doesn't have more force or more tension, it won't grow, okay? So the more muscle that you have, the more force you can apply. The more force you apply, the more growth. The more growth, the more tension, and so on. It repeats. Okay. This is why the strength work is designed the way that it is, which is why the weight going up is always the next step. Okay. We can stay at the same weight for like a week or two and try to increase reps. And if we're increasing by a decent amount, cool. If we're not, wait. But usually everybody here is probably programmed to go up in weight as long as the rep range was hit. But that's why. And the more advanced that we get with strength work, so once everybody's on like their reverse diet or their second 12-week cycle, this changes dramatically. You actually do rep testing and max reps or max weight at certain reps. But this is why, because we're trying to actually get a number for what your mechanical tension is. Now, this you guys don't have to worry about too much, but because I kind of do this for you, but the whole point is that you got to make sure you log your sessions. This is another issue with, the very, very simple and basic issue, but a really big issue nonetheless with most general programs is that, or class programs where if you're going in and doing whatever the thing is that day, you don't know what that was last week, right? There's no clean way to progress. And if you're not cleanly progressing, you can't guarantee you're putting more mechanical tension on this week than you were last week, which also means you may not grow at all in the muscle. Which, by the way, when I say grow muscle, what I also mean is not lose muscle. Because if you're not growing muscle in the gym as you're losing weight, you're going to lose muscle as you lose weight. The only times that people lose muscle as they're cutting is when they're not actively growing it in the gym. So if you guys want to take a screenshot of this, this is the gold. If you want to remember this right here. The volume, again, to increase muscle, 10 to 20 sets, taking a failure within 3 reps of failure. You rest 2 to 5 minutes. Okay, so you rest more than you probably think. Make sure you hit full range of motion. Make sure you get enough protein in. You get some protein before bed, sleep, and then every 2 months or so, you can deload, which basically just means that week you don't progress. You let your body actually recover. And that's just more of a psychological thing. Cool. All right. That is it.
I have a question.
Yeah, what do you got, Dina? I see you.
Okay, so I feel like I've been fucking a major thing up that I just learned tonight because when I hit failure, I don't do another rep.
What do you mean?
It was, I did, let's say I did, in my first rep of something today, I upped the weight and I went to failure right away. And then I was done. I thought once you hit failure, you don't do another set.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. So
I-
you want to, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So now I know that's a mistake. I
Yep.
also haven't been taking enough time between sets at all.
I'm a victim of that too. I do the exact same shit.
I mean, I'm probably like
I think we all do that.
yeah. It's easier. It's easier to like take a minute break and do less reps because the muscle still fatigues from the other set than it is to take 5 minutes and go to fucking war again. But like that's what we actually have to do. This is why it's really
longer
useful.
at the gym because people get on the machine, you know what I mean? That
Yep.
kind of thing.
I totally get. Yeah. So
I get it. It was definitely like out of ignorance, not out of not wanting to, you know what I mean? I
Yep.
had no idea.
No, 100%. Most people just don't understand what that could actually do.
Yeah.
Which it makes a big difference. And this is why I like supersets a lot, because if you
Mhm.
do one set of leg extension and then I'll go over there and do like a set of lat pull downs or something, by the time I come
Right.
back to leg extension, it's been 3 or 4 minutes. And so I'm good to
Right.
go again. Right. So it's like I'm still working out just as quick. It's just not on the same muscle.
Yes.
Which makes a big difference.
So I
And
do
you'll
like a circuit of
yeah,
like,
you do like circuit style. Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you do
All
that,
right.
you get through the workout pretty quick, but
Okay.
you'll actually grow the muscle at the same time. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Just take the whole gym up. It's fine.
You got it.
Let's take every machine. That's a good question, though. You guys have any other questions? Let me stop recording this.